There was a time when cars were more than just transportation. They were bold experiments in design, engineering, and performance. Throughout the 20th century, automobile companies across the world competed to build machines that were faster, more stylish, and more advanced than anything that came before. Some of these vehicles became instant legends, admired for their speed, beauty, and groundbreaking technology. But the automotive world changes quickly. New safety rules, fuel crises, financial problems, and changing customer preferences have forced many once famous cars to disappear from production. Some models simply became too expensive to build, while others were replaced by newer and more efficient vehicles. Even though these cars vanished from factory lines, their legacy continues through collectors, museums, and car enthusiasts who still admire them decades later. In this video, we're going to explore 10 vintage cars that once captured the world's attention but eventually disappeared from production. We'll look at who built them when they were introduced, their top speeds, their biggest strengths and weaknesses, and the reasons their production finally ended. Some of these cars were revolutionary for their time, while others became rare icons that are now worth a fortune. So let's travel back through automotive history and discover 10 unforgettable vintage cars that once ruled the roads but eventually vanished forever. 10 vintage cars that disappeared from production. 10. DeLorean DMC-12, 1981 to 1983. The DeLorean DMC-12 is one of the most recognizable cars ever built, even though its production lasted only a short time. This futuristic sports car was produced by the DeLorean Motor Company and first appeared in 1981. It was designed by the famous Italian designer Giorgetto Giugiaro and quickly gained attention because of its stainless steel body panels and dramatic gull-wing doors. The car used a 2.85-liter V6 engine that produced about 130 horsepower, allowing it to reach a top speed of around 175 kilometers per hour. For the early 1980s, this performance was decent, but it wasn't as fast as many other sports cars of that era. One of the biggest strengths of the DMC-12 was its unique design. The unpainted stainless steel body gave it a futuristic appearance that looked completely different from other vehicles on the road. The gull-wing doors also made the car feel exotic and luxurious. However, the car had several weaknesses as well. Its engine was considered underpowered, and many critics believed the performance did not match the car's sporty appearance. In addition, early models suffered from quality control issues because the company was still new and inexperienced. The biggest reason production ended was financial trouble. The DeLorean Motor Company struggled with rising costs and poor sales. In 1982, the company faced serious legal and financial problems, which eventually forced it into bankruptcy. Production stopped in 1983 after only about 9,000 cars were built. Even though it disappeared quickly, the DeLorean DMC-12 later became a pop culture icon and remains one of the most famous vintage cars ever made. 9. Volkswagen Beetle Classic, 1938 to 2003. The Volkswagen Beetle is one of the most successful and recognizable cars in automotive history. Originally designed in Germany during the late 1930s, the Beetle was created as a simple and affordable vehicle for everyday people. Production officially began in 1938, and over the following decades the car became famous around the world. Powered by a rear-mounted air-cooled engine, the classic Beetle could reach a top speed of around 115 to 130 kilometers per hour, depending on the model and engine size. One of the Beetle's greatest strengths was its reliability and simplicity. The car's engine design was durable and easy to repair, making it extremely popular in many countries. Its compact size also made it efficient and practical for city driving. Over the years, the Beetle developed a loyal fan base, especially during the 1960s and 1970s, when it became associated with youth culture and freedom. However, the Beetle also had some weaknesses. Compared to modern cars, its safety features were limited, and its small engine meant performance was relatively slow. As technology improved, consumers began demanding vehicles with more comfort, safety, and power. By the late 1990s, the original design was considered outdated. Because of these changing expectations and stricter safety standards, Volkswagen eventually decided to stop producing the classic Beetle design. Production of the original model finally ended in 2003 in Mexico, marking the end of one of the longest-running car designs in history. Even today, the classic Beetle remains a beloved vintage vehicle admired by collectors worldwide. 8. Jaguar E-Type, 1961 to 1975. The Jaguar E-Type is widely considered one of the most beautiful cars ever created. Introduced in 1961 by the British manufacturer Jaguar, this sports car quickly became famous for its sleek design and impressive performance. The car initially came with a 3.8-liter inline-six engine capable of producing around 265 horsepower, giving it a top speed of approximately 240 kilometers per hour. At the time, this made it one of the fastest production cars in the world. The E-Type combined speed, style, and advanced engineering. It featured independent rear suspension and disc brakes, technologies that were very advanced for its time. Its long hood, smooth curves, and aerodynamic shape made it visually stunning. Even Enzo Ferrari once called it one of the most beautiful cars ever built. Despite its many strengths, the E-Type had a few drawbacks. Maintenance could be expensive, and early models had issues with overheating and electrical systems. Over time, stricter safety and emissions regulations began to affect sports car designs. By the mid-1970s, the automotive industry had changed significantly. Jaguar eventually replaced the E-Type with the newer XJS model in 1975. Although production ended, the Jaguar E-Type remained an automotive legend and is still considered one of the most iconic vintage sports cars ever built. ES7, Toyota, 2000 GT, 1967 to 1970. The Toyota 2000 GT was a groundbreaking sports car that helped change the world's perception of Japanese automobiles. Introduced in 1967, the car was developed by Toyota in collaboration with Yamaha. It featured a 2.0-liter inline-six engine that produced around 150 horsepower, allowing the car to reach a top speed of about 220 kilometers per hour. At the time, Japanese cars were mostly known for practicality rather than performance. The 2000 GT changed that image completely. It featured a sleek design, advanced suspension, and high-quality craftsmanship. The interior included wooden dashboard panels and luxury details that rivaled European sports cars. However, the car was very expensive to produce. Because it was largely hand-built, the cost of manufacturing each vehicle was extremely high. As a result, the selling price was also high, limiting the number of customers who could afford it. Due to these high costs and limited demand, Toyota decided to stop production in 1970 after only about 351 units were built. Despite its short production run, the Toyota 2000 GT is now one of the rarest and most valuable classic Japanese cars ever created. 6. Citroën DS, 1955 to 1975. The Citroën DS was one of the most innovative cars ever produced. Introduced in 1955 by the French manufacturer Citroën, the DS stunned the automotive world with its futuristic design and advanced technology. It featured a hydro-pneumatic suspension system that allowed the car to glide smoothly over rough roads, making it incredibly comfortable to drive. The DS was powered by various four-cylinder engines throughout its production life, and depending on the model, it could reach speeds of around 160 kilometers per hour. The car also included innovative features such as power steering, disc brakes, and adjustable ride height. While the DS was admired for its innovation, it was also complicated to maintain. The advanced suspension system required specialized knowledge and repairs could be expensive. Despite these challenges, the car remained popular for many years. Eventually, by the mid-1970s, the design began to age, and newer technologies were replacing older systems. Citroën decided to discontinue the model in 1975 and replace it with newer vehicles. Even today, the Citroën DS is remembered as one of the most technologically advanced cars of its era. 5. Ford Thunderbird, first generation, 1955 to 1957. The first generation Ford Thunderbird was introduced in 1955 as Ford's answer to the growing popularity of sporty luxury cars. Unlike pure sports cars, the Thunderbird was designed to combine performance with comfort. It came with a powerful V8 engine producing around 193 horsepower and could reach speeds close to 180 kilometers per hour. One of the Thunderbird's biggest strengths was its stylish design. The car featured a long hood, elegant curves, and a luxurious interior. It quickly became popular among American drivers who wanted a sporty car that was still comfortable for everyday use. However, the two-seat layout limited practicality. Many buyers wanted more passenger space, which reduced the market appeal of the original design. Ford realized that customers preferred a four-seat configuration. Because of this demand, Ford redesigned the Thunderbird in 1958 with a larger body and additional seating. This effectively ended production of the first-generation model, turning it into a classic vintage car admired by collectors today. 4. Plymouth Barracuda, 1964 to 1974. The Plymouth Barracuda was one of the earliest muscle cars produced in the United States. Introduced in 1964 by Plymouth, the car quickly gained attention for its powerful engines and aggressive styling. Some versions were equipped with large V8 engines capable of producing impressive horsepower and reaching speeds over 200 kilometers per hour. The Barracuda's biggest strength was performance. Muscle car fans loved its powerful acceleration and bold design. However, competition in the muscle car market was extremely intense during the late 1960s and early 1970s. The biggest challenge came from changing government regulations and rising fuel prices during the 1970s energy crisis. Large high-performance engines became less practical, and insurance costs for muscle cars increased dramatically. Because of these economic and regulatory pressures, Plymouth decided to discontinue the Barracuda in 1974. Today, it remains a legendary muscle car that collectors continue to admire. 3. Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing, 1954 to 1957. The Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing is one of the most famous sports cars ever built. Introduced in 1954, it became instantly recognizable because of its dramatic gullwing doors that opened upward instead of outward. The car featured a powerful 3.0-liter inline-six engine capable of reaching speeds around 260 kilometers per hour, making it one of the fastest cars of its time. The car's lightweight tubular frame and fuel injection system were extremely advanced technologies during the 1950s. These features allowed the 300 SL to deliver exceptional performance both on the road and on racing tracks. However, the car was very expensive to produce and purchase. Only wealthy enthusiasts could afford it, which limited the number of buyers. Because of its high price and specialized design, production remained limited. Mercedes-Benz eventually stopped producing the Gullwing version in 1957 and replaced it with a roadster variant. Despite its short production period, the 300 SL Gullwing remains one of the most valuable and admired vintage cars in the world. 2. Pontiac Firebird Classic, 1967 to 2002. The Pontiac Firebird was introduced in 1967 as a stylish American pony car designed to compete with other performance vehicles. It offered a range of powerful engines, including large V8 options, capable of producing impressive speed and acceleration. Some versions could exceed 210 kilometers per hour. One of the Firebird's greatest strengths was its bold styling and strong performance. The car became especially famous through the high-performance Trans Am models, which were popular among enthusiasts and racing fans. However, by the late 1990s, sales began to decline. The Pontiac brand itself started struggling financially, and General Motors began reorganizing its product lineup. Because of falling demand and changing market trends, production of the Pontiac Firebird ended in 2002. Even though the car disappeared, it remains one of the most iconic American performance cars ever produced. 1. Dodge Viper, first generation, 1992 to 2010, The Dodge Viper was one of the most aggressive American sports cars ever built. First introduced in 1992, the Viper featured a massive V10 engine producing over 400 horsepower. Early models could reach speeds of around 265 kilometers per hour, making them extremely powerful for their time. The Viper's design focused heavily on raw performance. It had minimal electronic assistance systems, meaning drivers experienced pure mechanical power. This made the car thrilling, but also difficult to control for inexperienced drivers. Although the Viper developed a passionate fan base, its extreme performance and lack of practicality limited its mainstream appeal. Over time, stricter safety regulations and changing consumer preferences made it harder to justify continued production. Dodge finally ended production of the Viper in 2010, marking the end of one of America's most powerful sports cars. Despite its disappearance, the Viper remains a legendary symbol of American performance engineering. The vintage cars we explored today represent some of the most fascinating chapters in automotive history. Each one tells a different story about innovation, ambition, and the challenges faced by car manufacturers over the decades. Some were discontinued because of financial struggles, others were replaced by newer technology, and a few simply couldn't keep up with changing market demands. Even though their production has ended, these vehicles continue to live on through collectors, museums, and passionate car enthusiasts who preserve them for future generations. Seeing one of these cars today is like looking at a piece of history, a reminder of how creative and daring automotive design once was. As technology continues to evolve, new cars will replace old ones just as they always have. But the legends of the past will never truly disappear. They remain symbols of the eras that created them and continue to inspire the vehicles of tomorrow. And who knows? Maybe one day the cars we drive today will also become the vintage legends of the future.